Have you ever found yourself wide awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence, wondering why your body won't let you go back to sleep? You're not alone. In fact, this quiet hour has become an unexpected companion for so many older adults. But what if I told you that 3 a.m. wake up isn't a flaw, it's a message? In this video, we're going to explore 6 surprising, science-backed reasons why your body may be waking you at this specific hour, and what those moments might be gently trying to tell you. We'll talk about shifting sleep cycles, subtle hormonal changes, the emotional weight of quiet hours, and the small lifestyle choices that can reshape your nights. And most importantly, we'll explore how to respond, not with frustration, but with understanding and care. Let me tell you a short story. A few months ago, my father, he's 74, called me early in the morning and said, "I've been waking up around 3 a.m. every day. Not anxious, just awake. Like my body thinks it's morning already. Is this normal?" At first, he blamed himself. Maybe it was stress. Maybe he was just getting old. But the more we explored it together, the more we realized this wasn't something to fix. It was something to understand. That simple shift in perspective changed everything for him. So if you've ever wondered, why am I waking up at 3 a.m.? or felt a little lost in the quiet hours when the rest of the world is still asleep, stay with me. What you'll discover in this video isn't just about better sleep. It's about learning how your body speaks to you in silence. And maybe, just maybe, learning how to listen with a little more compassion. Let's begin. As we grow older, we begin to notice the quiet ways our bodies start to change. Some changes are loud and obvious: graying hair, slower steps, the ache in a knee. But others whisper. They show up at 3 a.m. when the world is asleep and your eyes are wide open. One of those quiet shifts has to do with a tiny hormone called melatonin, our body's natural sleep whisperer. It's what helps us fall asleep and stay asleep. But as we age, the body produces less and less of it, especially after the age of 50. And that drop, though subtle, has a profound effect. When you were younger, your body was like a well-timed orchestra. Melatonin would rise as night fell, guiding you gently into deep, uninterrupted rest. But now that same rhythm starts to fade. By the time 3 a.m. rolls around, your melatonin levels may have already dipped so low that your brain begins to slowly drift back toward wakefulness, even if you still need more sleep. And here's the catch. This isn't something you're doing wrong. It's not stress. It's not failure. It's biology, a natural, quiet shift in your internal chemistry. And you're not alone in it. Let me tell you about Harold. He's 72, a retired teacher, and always considered himself a great sleeper. But over the past year, he began waking up around 3:15 every morning. No nightmares, no noise, just awake. He'd lie there, eyes open, wondering if something was wrong with him. At first, he tried everything: reading, counting sheep, even warm milk. Nothing seemed to work. It wasn't until he read about melatonin that something clicked. He didn't blame himself anymore. Instead, he made a few gentle changes. He began keeping his bedroom completely dark, no blinking clocks or hallway lights. He took a short walk at sunset to help reset his body's clock. And he stopped using screens an hour before bed. No news, no scrolling, just soft music or a book. He still wakes up early now and then, but he no longer fights it. He listens to his body with patience. Sometimes he even uses that quiet hour for reflection or prayer. What once felt like a problem has become a gentle ritual, because sometimes the moment we stop blaming ourselves, something softens. And that's the hidden power of understanding how melatonin changes with age, not to fix the night, but to befriend it. So if you find yourself waking up before dawn, not with panic, but with quiet alertness, maybe it's not something broken. Maybe it's just your body doing what bodies do as they age, adjusting, shifting, speaking in quieter tones. And once you begin to listen, you might find yourself sleeping not just longer, but more kindly. Now that we've explored this hidden hormonal shift, let's take a deeper look at how your internal clock, your circadian rhythm, starts ticking a little earlier as you age, and what that means for your nights and your mornings. Let's move on to part 2, Your internal clock is ticking earlier than you think. There's something beautifully dependable about a clock. It ticks forward, second by second, always steady. And for most of our lives, our internal clock, the one that tells us when to wake, when to rest, when to feel alert or sleepy, follows a rhythm that feels familiar. But as we age, something curious begins to happen. That clock doesn't break, but it resets itself, gently, quietly. A little earlier with each passing year, this natural shift is known as advanced sleep phase syndrome. In simple terms, your body starts wanting to go to bed earlier and to wake up earlier, even if the world outside is still fast asleep. You may have noticed it already. Maybe you find yourself nodding off during the evening news or waking up at dawn without an alarm. You might even get a full 7 or 8 hours of sleep and still wake up at 3 or 4 a.m., completely alert, wondering, why now? It's not insomnia. It's not anxiety. It's simply your body running on a new schedule. Let me introduce you to Charles. Charles is 68, recently retired, and a proud grandfather of four. He spent decades waking up at 6:30 a.m. to commute to work. After retirement, he thought he'd finally sleep in. But oddly enough, the opposite happened. He began falling asleep around 8:30 p.m. and waking up at 3 a.m., feeling completely rested but confused. At first, he fought it. He tried staying in bed, tossing and turning, willing himself back to sleep. But the more he resisted, the more anxious he became. Then one day, his daughter mentioned something she'd read about aging and circadian rhythms. Charles started to track his patterns, and slowly a new understanding emerged. He wasn't broken, he was just on a new clock. So he made a few adjustments. He began having dinner a bit later, around 6:30 instead of 5. He added a short walk after sunset and read by a brighter light in the evenings. Sometimes he even called his grandkids for a quick bedtime chat. Within a few weeks, Charles found himself falling asleep closer to 10 p.m. and waking closer to sunrise. It wasn't perfect, but it felt more aligned with his life, his family, his morning coffee. Here's the quiet truth. As your external responsibilities shrink, no more morning meetings, packed schedules, or school drop-offs, your body starts listening more closely to itself. And sometimes it whispers, let's rest now, a little earlier. The key is not to force your old rhythm onto your new life. It's to gently reshape your evening routine so your sleep and your schedule can meet somewhere in the middle. Because aging isn't just about growing older, it's about growing aware. Now that we've talked about your body's shifting clock, let's explore something even more immediate. What happens when your body physically wakes you up in the middle of the night? Not because of hormones or rhythms, but because something feels off. In part 3, we'll look at the physical discomforts and hidden health cues that might be gently tapping you on the shoulder at 3 a.m., and how to respond with wisdom instead of worry. Let's keep going. Sometimes what wakes you up at 3 a.m. isn't your mind or your thoughts. It's your body whispering for attention in the stillness of the night. As we grow older, our bodies begin to communicate in subtler, quieter ways. Not through sharp pain or alarming symptoms, but through tiny discomforts. A stiff joint, a full bladder, a dry mouth. They seem small, but at 3 a.m., they are loud enough to pull you out of sleep. Take arthritic joints, for example. You might fall asleep comfortably on your side, but after a few hours in that same position, your knee or shoulder begins to ache. Not sharply, just enough. Or perhaps you've eaten dinner a bit late and laid down too soon after. And now in the quiet hours, acid reflux stirs gently awake. And then there's the bladder. As we age, the bladder becomes less elastic and the signals to go become more urgent, even when there's not much there. Add in certain medications for blood pressure, heart health, or fluid retention, and those nighttime trips to the bathroom can multiply quickly. This was exactly the case for Eleanor, a 76-year-old woman who once prided herself on sleeping like a rock. Lately, though, she'd been waking up around 3:30 a.m., like clockwork. At first, she thought it was stress or bad dreams, but then she noticed a pattern. It always started with a trip to the bathroom, followed by lying in bed, fully awake, unable to drift back. It wasn't until her doctor suggested tracking her medication schedule that things began to change. They discovered that a diuretic she was taking in the evening was increasing nighttime urination. So they moved her dosage to earlier in the day. She also began doing light stretches before bed and added a second pillow for back support. Within 2 weeks, Eleanor wasn't just waking less often, she was sleeping deeper. The key wasn't to fix the sleep itself, it was to listen more closely to what her body was saying. Because the truth is, our bodies are not betraying us. They are communicating with us, even in the middle of the night. And once we stop ignoring those messages, once we adjust the routine, the environment, the habits, we realize something powerful. Waking up isn't always a problem. It can be a prompt, a gentle invitation to care for ourselves better, softer, wiser. So far, we've explored how your sleep is shaped by changing hormones and internal rhythms, and now how your body's physical signals play a quiet role. But there's one more layer to this that's even more subtle, and often more deeply felt. It's not about what your body's doing, it's about what your heart is holding. In part 4, we'll explore how lifestyle changes, social shifts, and the emotional texture of aging can quietly shape your sleep in ways you may not even realize. Let's continue. Not all changes to your sleep begin in the body. Some begin quietly in your daily rhythms. The shape of your routine, the pace of your evenings, the absence of structure once provided by work or family. You see, when we retire or slow down, life becomes quieter. And that stillness, while often welcome, can gently pull the edges of our schedule earlier, even without us noticing. Dinner gets served at 5 p.m., the television goes off by 7:30, and by 8:30, we're already dozing off in our favorite recliner. It's a natural drift. There's no rush to prepare for tomorrow, no morning meeting, no kids to wake. And so the cues that once anchored your sleep schedule start to dissolve. That's exactly what happened to Walter, a 74-year-old widower who recently moved into a quiet neighborhood outside of Seattle. After decades of working as a high school coach, Walter found retirement both peaceful and disorienting. His days were slow: breakfast by 6:30, lunch at 11, and dinner just after 5. He'd watch the news, do a crossword, and often fall asleep on the couch before 9 p.m. At first it felt fine, but soon he was waking up around 3 every morning, completely alert, puzzled, and a bit frustrated. When we talked, I asked him, "Do you think your sleep is broken, or is your day just beginning too early?" That question made him pause, and over the next few weeks he made some simple shifts. He moved dinner an hour later and took short walks just before sunset. He swapped the evening news for a phone call with his grandson or a chapter from an old favorite book. And he gave himself permission to stay up a little longer without guilt. The result wasn't immediate, but it was real. He began sleeping until 5 a.m., then 5:30. It wasn't about chasing the perfect sleep. It was about living his day with more intention, which helped his nights feel more balanced. Here's the gentle truth. When your days become smaller, quieter, more predictable, your body responds in kind. Sleep doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of your rhythm, your story. And like any story, the pacing matters. If you want to sleep better, sometimes the key isn't melatonin or medication. Sometimes it's a bit more sunlight in the afternoon, a short phone call after dinner, or simply staying awake long enough to let your body feel truly ready for rest. But not all early wake-ups are rooted in routine. Sometimes the stillness of the night uncovers something deeper. Not physical, not practical, but emotional. In part 5, we'll explore how your heart and mind, with their memories, regrets, and quiet longings, can be just as powerful as any hormone in shaping your sleep. Let's continue. There's a certain kind of stillness that only exists at 3 a.m. No traffic, no voices. Just the low hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of a breeze outside your window, and your own thoughts, suddenly louder than they were during the day. This kind of wake-up doesn't begin in your body, it begins in your heart. As we grow older, the external noise of life often fades. No deadlines, no alarms, no school runs or crowded calendars. And in that quiet, something else rises. Memory, emotion, reflection. At 3 a.m., you might not be thinking about errands or chores. You might be remembering a lost friend, wondering if you said the right thing during a hard conversation, or quietly missing someone who used to sleep beside you. Let me introduce you to Gloria. She's 80, a retired nurse, and widowed for over a decade. Her days are full, gardening, crossword puzzles, FaceTiming with her grandchildren. But at night, especially around 3 a.m., her mind begins to stir. She remembers the sound of her husband's breathing, the warmth of his hand, and sometimes she feels a quiet ache, not of pain, but of presence that is now absence. At first, she thought it was insomnia, but the more she reflected, the more she realized her mind wasn't restless. It was reaching out for connection, for meaning, for something unspoken. So Gloria started keeping a small journal by her bed. When she woke up, she didn't fight the wakefulness. She wrote, sometimes just a few lines, a memory, a prayer, a word of gratitude. And slowly those early hours became less lonely and more like sacred time. Here's what she told me. I used to think being awake at 3 a.m. meant something was wrong. Now I think it just means there's something I need to hear. And she's not alone. You see, the aging heart is full of stories, lessons, love, and losses. And sometimes it speaks when everything else is quiet. So if you find yourself awake in the middle of the night, not anxious, just thoughtful, maybe you don't need a remedy. Maybe you need a ritual, a few quiet moments to check in with your heart, to listen to what it's whispering. Because healing doesn't always happen in daylight. Sometimes it happens in silence, in stillness. At 3 a.m., now that we've touched on the emotional layers of these early wake-ups, you may be wondering, so what do I actually do when it happens? What should I do at 3 a.m. when I'm awake, alert, and unsure? In our final section, we'll talk about just that. Not how to fight your sleep, but how to respond with grace, softness, and wisdom so you can turn those wake-ups into something meaningful. Let's wrap this journey with part 6, what to do at 3 a.m. Gentle responses instead of resistance. So here you are. It's 3 a.m. again. The house is quiet. You're awake. Maybe not fully, but enough to know that sleep has slipped away, at least for now. What do you do? Most of us, in that moment, begin to resist. We turn over. We check the clock. We sigh. We try to will ourselves back to sleep, like pulling a heavy door shut with tired arms. But often, the more we fight it, the more awake we become. What if you did something different? What if instead of resisting, you simply responded? Not with urgency, but with softness. Not with fear, but with grace. Because the truth is, not every 3 a.m. wake-up needs to be fixed. Some simply need to be met with care. Here are a few gentle ways to do that. Keep the lights low. Don't flood the room with brightness. Let your body stay close to rest. Drink a small sip of warm water, just enough to soothe your throat, not enough to wake you further. Sit quietly by the window. Look out into the night. Breathe. Notice how still the world is. You're part of that stillness. Write one sentence in a notebook. What you're feeling, what you're grateful for, or just a thought that came to you. Listen to something calming, a soft piece of instrumental music, a guided meditation, or even the sound of rain. Don't reach for your phone. Let technology sleep, even if you can't. And most importantly, speak kindly to yourself. Say, it's okay that I'm awake. My body is doing its best. My mind is simply stirring. I am safe. I am loved. Because sometimes sleep returns when we stop chasing it. And sometimes the time we spend awake can still be restful, if we allow it to be. Let me leave you with this thought. Waking up at 3 a.m. doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. It means your body is adjusting. Your mind is processing. Your heart is remembering. And all of that is part of living deeply. So next time it happens, try to meet the moment like you'd meet an old friend. Sit with it. Breathe with it. Let it pass. You may find that over time, those early hours become less of a burden and more of a quiet blessing. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video helped you feel seen, heard, or understood, please let me know in the comments. Share your story. You never know who might feel a little less alone because of it. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing. We have many more videos coming on rest, aging, health, and the beautiful, complex seasons of life. Until next time, sleep gently. You are not alone.